Church family, back on March 14th, our elders and pastoral staff made a decision based on our governing authorities and the threat of the coronavirus to stop our Sunday gatherings for the safety and health of our congregation. Honestly, I couldn't believe the words, "Don't come to church for the foreseeable future." Couldn't believe those were even coming out of my mouth. These past few months have been unprecedented for sure, but it's also been amazing to see God at work through you to bring the transforming hope of Jesus to Livingston County and the world. The primary reason for this video is to update you on the plans for the future. Our elders have been praying and meeting and making plans while the Lord has directed our steps. We're confident in His direction as PBC reopens and begins to gather publicly beginning July 5th. We haven't reached this decision quickly or flippantly, but prayerfully with wisdom, as we've taken into consideration the information from our governing authorities, while we care deeply for your health and safety as well as our witness to our community. One of the promises that I've been clinging to and experiencing is found in Proverbs 3, 5, and 6. Trust in the Lord with all your heart. Don't lean on your own understanding, but in all your ways acknowledge Him, and He will make your paths straight. I've asked Nick, our executive pastor, to take the next several minutes to give you the details. But just a couple more things real quick. First, would you do me a favor and do your best to manage your expectations? Things are going to be different. And secondly, don't let the details overwhelm you. Let the details excite you, because it means we are getting together, and although we won't be gathering like we're accustomed to, we'll be worshiping, studying God's Word, and seeing each other. And so without further ado, or without gilding the lily, I give you Pastor Nick.
All right, guys, so we're gonna push past the lily gilding stuff and go to the details. But first, let's get some context here. A couple weeks ago, we sent out a survey to our partners, and we were really impressed with the response. Thank you so much for those of you who responded to that survey. It was really helpful. Our elders in our last elder meeting took that information from your survey, combined with what we hear from our local, state, federal officials, the public health agencies, and we were able to come up with the guidelines of how we want to go about reopening in this first step. And just be reminded that what we're talking about today is for July 5th, and things can change and progress over time, but we're going to talk about this first step. And we've come to terms with it, and we acknowledge, we know that it's impossible for all of us to see all the details the exact same way. And so from the very beginning, we just want to be asking for your grace and peace toward us as we're trying to serve you and serve those who think differently from you, and serve those who haven't yet come to church before, and serve our community and our witness in our community. Those are the things that we're trying to do as we ultimately just try to serve the Lord. And so the first thing I want to talk about just has to do with capacity. This is maybe one of the things that's real obvious to you that we would start with. Because of the guidelines that we heard from the IDPH, we are going to be having a capacity in this particular room of 78 people. And that's just a number that comes from some percentages with some fire code stuff that you don't want to know anything else about, I'm sure. But what that means is that in this room, we're going to be honoring the social distancing guidelines that have been given to us from our officials, and some things will look different. The seating configuration in this room is going to be different from what you're used to. There's going to be space between rows. There's going to be 3 chairs on the same row between family units. It's going to look different in the fact that behind you, where you would be standing if you were here right now, in the balcony, that will be closed. In fact, our entire upstairs will be closed. And one of the things that's going to be real unique is we're going to be guiding people both into and out of our building, so that we can try and avoid in hallways having too many moments where we have contraflow going on and people are going past each other. One thing that may be challenging or just different for you is that we're also going to be helping people sit in certain places so we can maximize the space in this room and be as efficient as we can in here. And so from the beginning, if any of that seems real difficult to you, or maybe that's going to cause you to struggle a little bit, to have someone maybe guide you to a different seat than you're used to, we just want to ask again just for your grace toward us and the ushers who are going to be serving you. And maybe God's going to use this in a way to refine that in you, right? So we're going to ask you from the beginning, will you plan to come a little bit early if you're going to be a part of our service? We're going to have our doors unlocked to the building 30 minutes before each service. And then 15 minutes before each service, we're going to be seating people in their spots here in the worship center. And really the last thing that has to do with capacity is maybe something that you've already started to think through as you're hearing this and one of the logistical challenges. And that has to do with how we get the right number of people in our services. And so if you're watching this on Facebook or on our website or in an email that we've sent, wherever you're watching this right now, attached to it is going to be a link to our Reopen Church platform. And it's a real easy page. If you go to it, it's user-friendly, real simple, that allows you to be able to reserve a spot so that we can plan the right number of people for our services and be able to make good decisions for how we can serve you and accommodate you as best as we can. And so for the near future, until we are able to change this, for the coming weeks, we're just going to be asking you each week to go to that Reopen website that you'll see all over on our website. It'll be in emails, it'll be on our Facebook. Go to that Reopen site to be able to reserve a spot for you and any people in your family who are going to be coming with you. We're really excited to have you here. All right, the next thing we have to talk about is our services themselves. So on July 5th, we're going to be having two services at the times that you're most familiar with, 9 o'clock and 10:45. And for each of those services, we will be having a live stream online for those of you who are going to be watching online. Past July 5th, we haven't committed to the number of services or the times of services because we think there's still probably some things that we're going to have to adapt to and learn related to the stuff we just talked about with capacity issues that may come up. And so if we have to change anything with our service number or service times, we're going to get that information to you as quickly as we possibly can. Now, the services are going to be real similar to what you're used to. We're going to be worshiping together. We're going to be listening to the preaching of the word together. We're going to be praying together. But there will be a couple of differences. For one, our services will be a little bit shorter than what we have done in the past. They'll be right around 55 minutes. And then the second change is that there will be a little bit less fellowship than what we're accustomed to. And Pastor Jared said that earlier, that we need to just kind of manage our expectations during this phase of reopening. And really, we're just asking you in this to be thoughtful of those around you as our greeting changes a little bit. We won't be offering the same handshakes and hugs that you may be used to. And instead, we're going to be giving a lot of smiles and waves. And our hope with that is not that any of it feels impersonal. I know so many of us are just craving being back together and human contact that we can't wait to have in the context of our church. But this is an opportunity for us as believers to think more highly of others than we do ourselves, to sacrifice some of those preferences so that we can really honor and respect people who may come into this building who are going to have different thoughts, different reservations or concerns about touching. And so for that reason, when we come in, things will be a little bit different with regard to our fellowship. And then lastly, one thing that you'll hear more about in a little while is that because we'll continue to have online services, if you are here in this room, some things will be a little bit different in here as we've changed the room a little bit and changed our flow a little bit in order to bless our brothers and sisters and our friends who are going to be choosing to watch this service at home. So it's worth just being prepared ahead of time to know a few things, they're pretty small, will look a little bit different. So another thing that we're definitely going to talk about has to do with sanitization, safety, cleanliness, our health. We've made some tweaks in our rhythms here on our end to make sure that this building gets completely cleaned and sanitized before and after every service. And one of the extra steps we're taking is having a team of volunteers who have offered to serve you and serve me by being available to wipe down everything and sanitize any high-touch surfaces on Sunday mornings during the service while we're all here in the building. We're going to try and do everything we can in our power so that you don't have to touch hardly anything whenever you're here in the building. And we're going to make a few adjustments once we're here. So things like hand sanitizer. I know that you've thought more about hand sanitizer probably in the last few months than in your entire life. We will be having several more hand sanitizer stations here. And of course, you're welcome to bring your own hand sanitizer. The same thing's true for coffee. We will definitely have coffee for you. You're welcome to bring your own, but what we'll do differently is instead of having a station where we serve ourselves, we're gonna have a volunteer who's happy to be able to serve you a cup of coffee while they wear some gloves and a mask. Another little difference will have to do with our giving time. We won't be passing a giving plate or an offering plate around during our service. We're gonna have a box here where you can drop off a gift if that's something you're choosing to do. Or if you haven't done the switch to online giving, we just wanna remind you again that you can do that through our website. And we're so thankful for those of you who have made the switch to online recurring gifts at PBC. One of the biggest things that we should talk about, and perhaps the most controversial with this entire conversation, has to do with face coverings. The Department of Public Health has mentioned 3 primary focuses that have to do with our safety. The first is going to be our capacity and our social distancing. And the second has to do with cleanliness and sanitization. And the third one has to do with face masks or face coverings. We've come to the decision that we believe that with the first 2 adjustments, with our capacity, with social distancing, with adjustments in our service and our flow, with cleanliness and sanitization, we think that we're doing everything reasonably possible to be able to minimize your risk whenever you're here as best as we can. Now, our public health officials have issued guidelines that encourage and tell us that we should be wearing face coverings. And so the way we're going to tell you that is feel free to wear face coverings to church. These are encouraged. You could do this and you should do this. But to make sure that we don't give any false expectations, we want you to know that we won't be taking it on ourselves as a church to be enforcing this or asking someone to leave if they don't have a mask or to put one on if they're not wearing one. That won't be one of our responsibilities. And so from the very beginning, we do want to make sure that you can see clearly what this would be looking like so that when you come to this building, you're able to feel comfortable and assured of what is and isn't happening so that you and I, regardless of any personal preferences or convictions that we may have, are able to extend as much grace and kindness to those who are a little different than maybe we are. One of the last things we need to talk about has to do with families and those of us who have young children. So we won't, on July 5th, this first step of reopening, we won't be having PBC Kids, which is our children's ministry here. We love PBC Kids. We absolutely affirm and believe in the power and the significance of having age-appropriate teaching and worship and fellowship time where they develop together with other children their age. We love that and we think it's a wonderful thing. But for this particular moment of reopening, we won't be having PBC Kids. With that in mind, your children are absolutely welcome to come with you. Let me tell you kind of what that'll look like. Here on our property, we're gonna have 2 different spaces where you could choose to worship with us. It could be, number 1, here in this main room in our worship center, from where we're gonna be streaming the live online service. We're also going to be having another service taking place in the Family Life Center, the FLC. That's a building about 100 yards behind me. And this is where we're going to be having a family service. So let me tell you a little bit about what that would look like. The family service, we will have a live feed of everything that's going on here in the worship center. But it's going to be a place where if you're somebody who has young children and maybe you get concerned on if they're going to be too wiggly or too loud to be able to be in this room, this is a place where you can go and know that you relate with other families who have children the same age who are going through the exact same thing. We're going to have someone from our PBC Kids team who's going to pause in the middle of our musical worship and be able to lead our children with some children's worship and maybe some dancing, some fun stuff like that. We're going to try and give you some resources ahead of time. So we'll offer downloadable links if you want to for some crafts or some coloring sheets, but we'll also have those things here. And if you're bringing something with home, that's great. You could bring toys if you'd like to, or if you're wanting to bring some coloring supplies, would you please just try and bring things that are good for the building? Things like coloring pencils, colored pencils, and crayons, maybe not so much markers and Sharpies and paint, those sorts of things. We want to be clear on one thing though. When we're over in the family service, we won't be having either the nursery. If you're familiar with our building, you know we have a nursery connected to the FLC. We won't be having our nursery or any of the rooms upstairs, the children's ministry rooms, available for you to leave children unsupervised. In fact, all of those rooms will be completely closed when you're here. The nursery will be available if there's any parents of a young infant who needs to eat or an infant that needs to be laid down to take a nap, we'll have that available. But otherwise, the plan for this moment of reopening would be, if you choose to bring your children, that you would take on supervising your children while they're here. One of the things that we've heard about has to do with families who have decided if they're a family that has perhaps 2 parents or 2 guardians, they're gonna maybe take turns and have one parent or guardian take the children, and if we have nice weather, go outside on our property. Many of you know we have a ton of wide open space here, and some of you may choose to do that and let your kids play with other kids and play outside together. We absolutely would love that if you guys choose to do that together. That'll be a joy. But again, to be clear, we won't have anyone from our team who will be able to be supervising your children. We will be asking you to take that responsibility on for yourself. And this offers us an ability to truly honor and serve those of our friends who are going to be watching online, so that we are able to have a space that's really conducive for a family worship environment, and have this room be able to be quiet and focused for those who are going to be worshiping with us remotely. So friends, one of the things that we learned from our survey is that the overwhelming majority of you are just chomping at the bits and you're ready to be back here at church. I'm with you. I can't wait to be with you, and we are excited to have you here in this building so we can be taking steps, getting back together, worshiping more and more together in person. It'll be such a joy. We're really excited. But I also want to acknowledge that I know that there are some of you who won't be feeling the same way. And that's absolutely fine. For those of you who see this a little bit differently, and for you or your family or your personal decisions, you don't think that the right move is for you to be back here in this building quite yet. And if that's you, we honor you. And as we've said before, we're going to be doing everything in our power to be able to provide you with the most excellent online worship experience possible that's conducive to you having a real impactful and meaningful morning of worship here with your church family, even while you're at home. And so to put things real clear, if you find yourself feeling sick, or maybe one of your children, someone in your family is feeling sick, absolutely, please stay home and know that we respect you, we honor you, we absolutely understand that decision that you're making. Maybe it's something different. If you find yourself feeling as though, for whatever reason, you would consider yourself to be a little bit more at risk in this moment, so absolutely, please stay home and do so with all the honor that we possibly could give you, telling you that we completely understand and respect that decision that you're making. It makes a lot of sense. And lastly, if you're someone who is uncomfortable whatsoever with how we've described this, if perhaps you would see it differently and you think that there would be a better way to reopen, and you think that maybe some of the decisions or restrictions or guidelines that we're talking about don't go far enough, or maybe they don't satisfy some of the concerns that you have, and you're uncomfortable with this, please stay home and know that we get it. And we understand this is a really challenging moment where it is so hard, and we have so many different perspectives coming into this particular moment in the life of our church. And we would rather you be able to be home and happy than be here and miserable. So please, if you find yourself uncomfortable, stay home with total freedom, knowing that we are hopeful that you're able to have an opportunity where the Holy Spirit's able to move in the most meaningful and significant way in your life. And that's okay if that's at home for this moment. Ultimately, one of the things that's drawn us all together throughout the last few months, and as we consider this season that we're still in right now and may be in for a while yet, would be that God would be calling us together and binding us and knitting us together so that we would be one people on one mission to serve one God together. And for that reason, we've just chosen to be bonded together in a spirit of unity and grace and peace. Friends, we are excited to be able to worship with you guys really soon.